There are many choices to make when choosing a new road bike, not least of which is the frame material. Now, aluminium has long been regarded as a really good choice with great performance and great value for money. And in this video, we're exploring this very topic with the help of Neil Webb, the founder of Bowman Cycles here in the UK, on this, the launch of the brand new Palace 3 road bike. So we'll go through some of the advantages offered by this material and debunk some myths. So sit back and enjoy, and if you have any questions, put them down below.
Aluminium makes great bikes when engineered properly. I was a product tester for a long time, and I was always a big fan of well-made aluminium bikes. Performance for the money was, you can't beat it. And then when I started Bowman, as a young company who wants to do something a little bit more innovative than just buying an open mold carbon frame and putting a logo on it. Unless you have a huge budget, you're very limited in what you can do if you want to use carbon fibre. And so by using aluminium, you just have a lot more flexibility in what you can offer, how innovative you can be, how different from what's available you can make your product. There's some very good open mold frames around. A lot of people were using them, a lot of brands started that way, but there was always something wrong with them, and that was one of the reasons when I started the brand after being a bike tester. It was always, I like this bike, but it needs this bottom bracket, or I like this frame, but the cable routing is wrong, or this would be great if only it had the other thing. So because you have all those ideas going around in your head when you start a bike brand, you want the bike you make to be correct. And aluminium was something that allowed me to do that. And with the knowledge that when it's engineered well, you can get a great handling bike, it was an obvious choice. At the absolute pinnacle, no. The very, very, very best carbon, and that's not a material choice, it's an engineering thing. The very best engineered carbon fibre structures can take the same load or perform in the same way as an aluminium structure, but the aluminium structure will always weigh more. When it comes to mid-range stuff or a lower price point stuff, so that will be a lower modulus carbon generally, with lower quality resins, you'd end up with a heavier structure that doesn't perform as well. So if you have a specific price point in mind, unless you're spending 3, 4, 5 grand on a carbon fibre frame, you're not going to get more performance than you'll get out of the best engineered aluminium frame. Carbon is not always better. Great carbon is great, great aluminium is great steel is great titanium is great. They all are very, very good at what they're designed to be done when engineered well. I still have exceptionally fond memories of some really lovely high-end carbon fibre bikes I've ridden in the past. I've got some terrible memories of some mid-range carbon fibre bikes. And that goes across low-end steel or high-end steel. It's one material is not superior than any other. It's how well it's made, what the application is. And if you're trying to make a bike that performs well, that puts a smile on your face when you're riding, and you've only got £1,000 for a frame, or £2,000 for a complete bike, or £2,500 for a race bike, you'll be much better off with a well-engineered aluminium frame that will perform better and will make you smile more often than a mid-range carbon fibre bike. I think it's a fairly well accepted fact with people who manufacture bikes and test bikes and review bikes and understand bikes actually being ridden as objects rather than just looking at a spec sheet. Every single one of those would buy a high quality aluminium frame over a cheap or even mid-range carbon frame. Any product engineered badly will ride badly. Aluminium has had a bad rap because in its earlier days, one, it was used on cheap bikes, so people associate it with cheap frames, and two, the technology and the understanding of the material wasn't there to make thin enough walls or shape the tubes enough to get a good quality ride characteristics. I've been making aluminium frames for 7 or 8 years now, and we've never had a comment from customers or testers or anybody else that our bikes are stiff or harsh. Go back to the classic Cannondale CAD 1 and CAD 2 from 2000 and early 2000s. They were stiff as hell. But we're now 20 years later, everybody understands how aluminium works now. The walls can be made thinner, the materials have progressed, the alloying elements allow you to stretch the material more, which gives you thinner walls and a better tubing shape manipulation, and all of those things have a massive impact on ride characteristics. There's never really been anything within the material that stopped me making the bikes I want to as yet. There are certain things that are a lot easier to manipulate in aluminium than it would be in carbon fibre, just because every individual tube is a mould, as opposed to the whole frame being one mould, or a rear end and a front end being a mould. So I can make a top tube design or a down tube design or a chainstay design, and by changing the mandrel, which is the bit that goes inside the tube, to change the length of the butting on the tube, you can use the same external shape across 3 or 4 different frame sizes. And by changing the butt lengths, you change the ride characteristics to get the same ride across all the different frame sizes. If you were to do that in carbon fibre, you'd need 5 different moulds across the 5 different sizes. In the grander scheme of things, aluminium is used on cheap bikes. There's no denying that. But if you look at the likes of what Cristalluzio is doing at Specialized with their high-end alloy stuff, you look at Trek's ALR quality, you look at Giant have got a lot of high-end aluminium. There's Columbus are doing some good stuff with aluminium. Standard in Germany are doing great stuff with aluminium. It's not just used in cheap stuff. The carbon fibre is best idea is a very, very easy sell, because people see carbon fibre, they think Formula One, they think Tour de France, they think it must be better. But cheap carbon fibre, thick walls, low quality resin, it feels very dead. It just doesn't have any life to it in terms of the ride. It doesn't do everything that a good carbon fibre structure should do. It doesn't dampen vibration. It isn't particularly stiff. It's not particularly light. It has none of the benefits of carbon fibre apart from the name. So but people will buy it because they see carbon fibre. It's an easier thing to sell a carbon fibre frame than it is to educate someone on why aluminium is better. It helps that some of the bigger brands do still believe in aluminium. The obvious one that I didn't mention in there is Cannondale. They've never stopped making high quality aluminium frames. And if you speak to performance racers in cross or crit racing or road racing, they will always have massively affectionate stories about the CAD range across the years. And one of our first ever reviews, they compared us favourably to a CAD 10, which it was at the time, and for me that was the biggest compliment I could ever have. It was like, if I can make a CAD 10 without the bottom bracket that I don't like, and with nicer cable routing that's easier to look after, it's great, because it's a CAD 10 for the everyman. I think at the very top end, carbon fibre can make a better product, but you have to spend a huge amount of money on that. Specialized have done it with some of their development teams, proven that it's good enough to use pro continental racing. The reality is, an aluminium frame, a good quality aluminium frame at 1100 1150 grams, weighs the same as the Bianchi that just won 3 stages of the Tour. It weighs the same as the Pinarello that just, won stages at the Tour. In terms of crashing and catastrophic failures, if you ride both bikes into a wall, they will both be unusable. But if you have a crash in a race, or crash in a sportive, or crash on a club run, you'll most certainly not end up with a bike in 2 halves. You may end up with a little dent, or if somebody is careless in your house and the kitchen door swings and touches the top tube, you're not going to put a crack in your top tube. You're going to have a bike that's got a battle scar, and you'll have a story to tell, but the bike will still ride and it's still usable. So in terms of longevity and value for money, there's definitely sort of legs in that. I think it just allows you to be a lot quicker and more responsive in what you want to do as well. I mean, if you have to develop a whole frame's carbon fibre mould, you've got a lot of time in that tooling. But if we want to just change a chainstay, we have to change one piece of tooling, and then we can carry on and do that. Whereas, it's a smaller, faster process. We know the material we're using. We know how that shapes. We don't have to then come up with a shape, come up with a mould, and then work on 17 different ply layups to work out which one gives us the idea we have. We know how it's going to work. I mean, all good design is about being fit for purpose. It's like we're both sitting on chairs. This one is designed to be outside regularly and last for 25 years doing that. It's not as comfortable as the chair you're sat on, but if we left your chair outside for 25 years, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. And that's no different. It's like, you make a lawnmower that cuts a small garden, it's really easy to manoeuvre. Make a lawnmower that cuts a field, it's big and bulky and hard to use. It's about designing for purpose. It's quite straightforward. And if the bike designer, if you know that bike designer is designing it to be usable and real world ready, there's a million and one catchphrases, but it's make the focus of it enjoying cycling, and make the focus of it real world reliability with not too many random standards, spare parts that are easy to buy, like cable routing that's easy to fit and easy to maintain. All those things make a massive difference to how much time you get to spend on your bike and how much time you'll enjoy riding, rather than worrying about which proprietary bearing you can or can't find from a random online store. Well, the first bike was the Palace, named after Crystal Palace race circuit. Crystal Palace race circuit has, without shadow of a doubt, the best corners on any race circuit I've ridden, full stop. And going around corners is what I enjoy about cycling, mountain biking, BMX racing, road racing, even diving down a bank on a track. Corners are what make me smile. And Palace has the best corners. So if I was making a bike that could be raced, or is a fast performance road bike that corners well, I can just imagining diving through Dead Man's Corner or around the hairpin at Palace. But that's the story of the name. Then the Palace R was the second generation, kind of revised, refined, renewed sort of thing. And then on the third generation, the primary reason for the third generation came about was because disc brakes were becoming more a reality for normal road riding. They were off-road drop bar bikes. Disc brakes were great for that, and then they became more available and more accepted by people who are riding primarily on the road. And our third generation came out of trying to develop a Palace R disc, and there ended up being so many changes that were required for the rear end, and the tube shape and the cable routing forks, head tube dimensions, that we ended up developing a complete new tube set, like a Generation 3 tube set that worked across all the different models that we've kind of currently got. So the wheel, which is the endurance frame, the Palace 3C, which is the caliper version, and the Palace 3, which is the disc version. In my opinion, for most people, disc brakes make the most sense for most of your riding. Still believe in rim brakes, which is why we make a caliper bike, the 3C. It's very much a performance bike. It shares one cable guide cover with the last frame. Yeah. It's not necessarily about asymmetry with forces, because yes, the disc brake puts a different force on the chainstay, but if you're making a chainstay that's strong enough to resist the kind of compression and tension forces of pedalling, and be long enough and be strong enough to be welded where it needs to be, you end up effectively using the same chainstay either side, but with a different, you're using the same raw round tube, roughly the same butt lengths, and then you just shape one with a left side tooling and one with a right side tooling, so you have two different sizes. We've evened the depth of the chainstays, whereas on the previous caliper version, the drive side chainstay was deeper because it had to resist more of the forces from the chainstay. So we've effectively balanced the chainstays. We've brought the non-drive side chainstay up to the size of the drive side previously. And then it's a case of it's all new dropouts, obviously, because it's bolt through axles and disc brakes. The chainstays are also differently shaped for increased clearance. The seat stays are very, very, very similar. We've just slightly tweaked them to make the way they weld onto the seat tube a little bit easier in manufacturing. The overall shape we were always very happy with. The ride quality that every customer has ever said was always very happy with. We always got great test results on that, so that's the thing. Head tube, we've gone to a slightly smaller diameter because we were able to. It's a complete new fork.
Okay,
yeah. And because it's a newer fork, we can reduce the size of it a bit, because we don't have to reuse the old 1.5 inch taper. It's a 1 3/8 taper, which is a standard FSA bearing size. So much like a standard seat post, standard headset size, standard everything. Being able to go into a shop or go onto your insert website of choice here, but you can go onto xxx.com, whatever it is, and you can buy an FSA 1 3/8. We had a target where we wanted to keep it within 100 grams, and we've, on almost every size, it's under that. Compared to our original caliper, which was like 1180 or something, you know. Yeah, it's 1250. I mean, this is Ultegra alloy wheels, alloy bar and stem, and it's 8 kilos, 8.1 in a 56. Basically, we've done frame sets forever since we started, because we were never able to compete with the big companies. But over the years, we've slowly been giving people exactly the same advice and seeing that loads of people are building the same frames up. And we've got to the point and the scale now where we can offer something like that. But rather than saying we're going to make £1,000 bike, a 2,000 bike, what we've done is effectively chosen the same spec as we have on all of our demo bikes. Really, really nice tyres, good quality hand-built wheels, solid, reliable group set, and a full group set, and finishing kit that holds all the things in place. The contact points are good quality, and it's £2,500, which, you know, it matches very well with an obvious competitor of the CAD 13 disc, which is, it's got Cannondale's finishing kit, it's got a full Ultegra group set apart from their own crank, and it's the same price. You know, £2,500 grand, especially one that comes with 100 quid's worth of GP 5000s out of the box and helm built wheels that will stay straight for years. Nope, it's not my surname. I wasn't quite that vain. All of our bikes are like my cycling history, and the start of my cycling is all about the location and where it became. It's why the bikes are named after. Palace is named after the corners of my favourite racing circuit. The Weald is where the range of hills you go over when you're on a big day out. The Pilgrim's Way is a great route that goes on and off road for 140 miles straight through the middle of our riding. The Footscray was the oldest cyclocross race venue in the UK until it closed down. So everything was location based. Where I was living when I started the company was right next to an area of heathland, and on that heathland was the very first archery club that was formed after archery was banned after the Norman conquests. And it wasn't until the 1600s that archery clubs were allowed to exist anymore, and the first archery club with a royal charter was started in the building that you could see from where I lived. And it was just a nice little thing that summarised the location, and it was known as Bowman's Lodge and Bowman's Heath and Bowman's Cottage and Farm and Court, and it sort of sounded a bit English, a little bit. It sort of resonated a little bit, and it means nothing and it means everything. When you know about it and you know its location, it's like all of the bikes are inspired by where we ride and what sort of riding you get in those places. So the name had to match that. Fades are great. Geometric graphics are great. And when I was one of the first prototypes I was testing, I did a big loop in Mallorca with a friend. And we ended up bonking and having food in this art gallery cafe in Soyer that had the most incredible Moroccan Arabic floor tiles, and that image has just stuck in my mind, and that sort of motif I've used on the original Pilgrims decals on the fork legs, and it's a little kind of motif that's come, and then this is just a small part of that pattern that's then kind of stretched out and tweaked to kind of go with sort of a modern geometric fade. So I just wanted something that was a bit more interesting, and always loved a classic racing stripe, sort of pinstriping and fat stripes and thin stripes.
Something that reminds you of bonking.
It reminds me of a good day out, a good day of riding, because you can feel 1,000 deaths, but after you've had that Coke and that custard tart, the next bit of your ride is amazing, and the sun's out and it's lovely, and it's just a good memory for sure. It's what you should do and what the bikes do. The bikes will always have riding at their centre. It's, the spirit of everything we do is about the quality of the riding. And ride with spirit, enjoy your riding. Actually just do it, enjoy the riding. It's the bikes, what we do, all of it. Cycling's brought me a lot, and I just want more people to do it and to get the most out of it. So.